That's why the one villain, what's his name? Zalalak or whatever? He has this, crazy helmet that,
like a kind of chess piece looking motherfucker. Happy New Comic Book Day, geeks, and welcome to issue 33 of the Script Heroes podcast.
The show where we bring you comic news, book reviews, and industry blues. My name is Joseph Jasanowski, and I'm the writer of Janitor Hero, Cunning Carly, and the Cryptoverse.
And I'm Katie Markham, scripter of the Rest Robot Country Club and ghostwriter extraordinaire. We have some wonderful pulls today, a bit of a thick pull list. We've got Green Arrow, number 13, Void Rivals, number 10, William of Newbury, number 2, Absolute Power, Ground Zero, Drawing Blood, number 3, and Rook Exodus, number 3.
Yep, we're finally going to be diving into Absolute Power after a lot of new segments leading up to it the past few months. Very excited to talk about that. But if you enjoy our discussion on any of those polls or anything else you find in this episode, you can follow the pod on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube, all at the handle Script Heroes Pod. Or you can find my personal socials at all the same sites at JJAZ1111.
And I'm on all socials at Katie Markham Pro.
And now, on to the news. Okay, so for our news this week, we're going to be talking a little bit about G.I. Joe, because there are a couple kind of big things that seem to be sweeping up the comic book industry involving G.I. Joe. I'm sure you are at least semi-aware of the G.I. Joe Kickstarter that has been going on for the past month.
I am not.
Okay,
I have not heard anything about this.
So Skybound launched a G.I. Joe Kickstarter that ended a few days ago. And it was for basically hardcover compendiums of the entire original series, which they had continued alongside their Energon universe. They had also continued the, I think it's continued with 301 with them, and they've continued the long-running G.I. Joe series. So they basically launched a Kickstarter with compendiums, of all the first 300 issues. Or so. This ended yesterday. I think yesterday or 2 days ago. June 26th, 2 days ago. This ended 2 days ago. And now, since you don't know anything about it, I can have a little bit more fun here asking questions. So these costed, I want to say, $300 for the full compendium set, or you could get both sets for $600 because they did one that was G.I. Joe themed and one that was Cobra Commander themed with different colors. So you get them each for $300, both of them for $600, and then there were versions that came with that were signed by some of the creators, which are Larry Hama, I believe was one of the Larry
I wouldn't
Hama.
Be surprised he's the G.I. Joe man.
And there was another. Never mind. I think the only signing was Larry Hama. Okay, I thought there was another.
Well, I think he did the lion's share of.
He did. I thought there was. I don't know why I thought there was another signing there. Anyway, so a few options that went for more than that, but typically the 300 and the 600 options. The funding goal was $50,000. Mm-hmm. Do you want to take a guess and now Kickstarter has the post funding, so I can't say that this is what it ended with, but I don't think it's gained too much since it's ended. But do you want to guess what number it is at right now?
I mean, assuming one copy, $300. I think that it is a conservative estimate to say that 1,000 people would do this. So we're already looking at over $300,000. Do I think?
I like that you're you're mathing it out like this. This is a good way to do it.
Look, I'm just incrementally. Do I think it made it all the way to $3 million? I'm gonna say no. I don't think it got that high. I'm avoiding looking at your face to make sure that I don't get any spoilers. Mm-hmm. I think it got more than 600,000 though. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna say it got 1.2 million.
It's really funny you were talking about the 3 million number. This is at $3.7 million.
God damn.
Making it the highest grossing Kickstarter of all time.
Comic book Kickstarter?
Comic book Kickstarter of all time.
That is pretty bonkers. I will say, I think I vaguely remember
10,359 backers, by the way.
That so tracks. That fully tracks. when I don't think I knew it was specifically about GI Joe or anything, but when you said it was Skybound, I had a just tingle of a memory of people being a little up in arms about.
People get up in arms about like big companies running Kickstarter, but yeah, so there's a lot of people who tend to have problems with like big publishers using Kickstarter, which
Mhm.
like I get to some extent, because the idea of Kickstarter, I think in its inception, it's like, to fund things when you don't have money to fund them yourself. But the funny thing with that, where like all the people getting up in arms, like I think we have a decent, and I say we because I think you do as well. But obviously from my experience, like we have a decent net of Kickstarter creators who we are
Yeah.
friendly with, or connected to on social media. And I feel like I always see those people, the like smaller tier Kickstarter creators, like be real excited about stuff like this, because it tends to bring more people to the platform. Like if you're a GI Joe fan but you didn't use Kickstarter, you probably went to Kickstarter to use
Yeah.
this, even if you weren't a typical Kickstarter creator. So you might then see something else that piques your interest and buy that. But there are like a subset of people who seem to think like, people have X amount of money to spend on Kickstarter, and any dollar that goes to GI Joe is taking away from an indie creator. But I don't tend to agree with the idea that people who are spending $300 on GI Joe, collected editions,
Exactly.
are 100% like the people who are now not buying indie creator books who
Yeah,
would
I
have been
think that's kind of the
before.
big thing for me. Like, if they were releasing like a floppy series or something, I would understand more where it's like, oh, this is actual like competition for your, 3 issues of your creator owned
Yeah,
comic. But this is not that, and this is the type of thing that I think it makes sense to do a Kickstarter for, where maybe it's not something that they think is going to have totally broad appeal. Obviously, they were wrong, but I guess I don't know what I guess I don't know what the metric for Skybound would be to justify something as like broad appeal. 10,000
I
seems like a lot, but I don't know if it is
10,000 for omnibuses is almost certainly a lot. Like the numbers like for
exactly.
floppies, 10,000 wouldn't be a big number.
No, no, yeah.
For trade paperbacks, it would probably be like a decent number. But then for omnibuses, it's like, I think it's a really good number.
Oh, I would think so as well.
Especially for
But
sets of 3 omnibuses. Like you're talking, obviously you're
um,
talking nearly $4 million.
exactly, yeah. But obviously, there's not a spectacular way to get that sense beforehand. Um,
No,
and also, it is like such a hyper specific collectible item that
yeah,
maybe it's not something that you want just sitting in a warehouse somewhere, because there probably is like a, you know, 10,000 person subsect that's like, yes, I want these. And I don't know that they're things that would, sell off the shelf, really.
yeah. No, agreed. And I like, just to like, I feel like I've seen such a like swell of people talking about this Kickstarter, and thus talking about Kickstarter in general. I have to think that Kickstarter saw like a surge in just their site usage. And I would love like Kickstarter to put out numbers of like when these crazy Kickstarters go off from
Mm-hmm.
this. I think the last one people were complaining about is I think Boom did like a something similar with Power Rangers, and that was like not this
Mm-hmm.
well, but also ridiculously well selling. And like, I'd be interested to see like the numbers on when those kinds of things are being run, like what, how, if that affects, and how that
Mm-hmm.
affects funding of like other projects. If funding in general just goes up during those periods, or if it goes down or stays the same, whatever. I would be
No,
very interested
definitely
to
an
know.
interesting metric. And I will also say, as a kind of final point, like, obviously, Skybound, imprint of Image, huge, massive publisher in the space, but it's not like it's, DC and Marvel doing this.
No,
It's
no.
like Image is comparable to DC at this point, I think. Uh,
I mean, yeah, especially like you talk, like we're talking Skybound's probably run by the richest man in comic books, or
yeah,
one of the richest men in comic books.
for sure.
I don't know. I don't know who has more money between Todd McFarlane and Robert Kirkman, but I guess one of the two of them have the most.
Probably. You would think. But yeah, I mean, it still is this sense of like indie though. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's not DC and Marvel. Like
Especially
you
because like I'd venture to bet, at least from like the way that Image and Skybound run, that like the creators on these books are probably seeing a decent check cut from this,
you
which
would
is like
hope.
a nice thing. You would hope.
And
But
Larry Hama's signing them, so
he's signing
it has
hundreds of
his
plates and stuff. So
endorsement.
yeah. You think that he would make money
Yeah,
from that?
yeah.
One would hope. Hey Larry,
Yeah,
can
so
you
I
sign
think
like 600 plates? We're not going to pay you anything, but
We'll pay you for the plates, Larry, but not for the
Yeah.
books.
No.
No, I actually saw Larry Hama a few years ago at C2E2 in a panel about like the business of comic books. And
Yeah.
after hearing him speak, I am sure that he is getting paid handsomely for his work.
Yeah.
He's a man who knows his worth.
But do you want to hit on the last little bit of G.I. Joe news? Because launching,
yeah.
I think this news came out basically as soon as the Kickstarter ended, because good time to fucking announce this shit. So Skybound, up until this point, if you're not aware, we've talked about the Energon universe a decent amount. We were reading Transformers for a while. We still both pick it up, but we're reading Void Rivals on the podcast.
Literally
we haven't read
week.
a ton of the G.I. Joe books, but the way that they've been doing G.I. Joe, like I said, they've been continuing the main G.I. Joe line from 300, 301, 302. I don't know what number they're at now, but that's been in its own continuity, the one that has existed for, decades at this point. So that's been its own thing. But in terms of the Energon universe, they've been doing, Cobra Commander, Duke, Destro,
Scarlet just started.
Scarlet. So I think those are the 4 that have happened so far, and they've all been miniseries. But there hasn't been a G.I. Joe title in the Skybound universe. Well, Skybound has just announced a new G.I. Joe title set in the Energon universe, with being made by Joshua Williamson, Tom Riley, and Jordi Belair, and it's going to come out in November.
I mean, last week we were speculating about what Joshua Williamson was going to be getting up to, since he was leaving Green Arrow and Batman and Robin. It's like, all right, I guess this is probably it.
Yeah, well, we had talked. He did the first 2 minis.
Yeah.
Cobra Commander and Duke. I don't know. I don't think he's doing Destro, and I know he's not doing Scarlet. So it makes sense that he was
it sure
moved
does.
on to the official GI. I guess they're all official GI Joe title. The title GI Joe title.
I cannot imagine just looking at the demographic of writers for the Energon universe. They must be having such a grand old time.
Honestly, they sound like
it.
If you read any of the letters,
the right age for it to be the stuff that they grew up with and have all this nostalgia for. They are definitely all just sitting around nerding out together over this, and that is so wholesome. Pages,
and it's just them nerding out about don't worry, that character's come. Oh yeah, no, we're talking. Oh man, I just read that thing that this other creator's doing in this universe, and it's so they all seem to be having such a grand old time,
which is so cute,
so exciting. It's such an interesting feel for the most successful shared universe right now in indie comics, to be it's just a bunch of guys having a lot of fun with stuff from their childhood.
It's literally just a bunch of dudes playing with toys, and Kelly Thompson, who I think is doing Scarlet. So a bunch of people just playing with toys. Oh. How just cute and sweet, and what a wonderful spirit of comics to have, of just that
Absolutely.
sense of imagination and joy and nerddom. Not to be a goober, but wonderful. Anyway, do we have any other bits of G.I. Joe news?
No, that is the G.I. Joe news right now. Most successful Kickstarter of all time, launching a new comic. Yeah, the most successful comic book Kickstarter of all time, and now launching an all-new G.I. Joe title set in the Energon universe.
How thrilling.
Energon universe is killing it right now, man.
They are.
Honestly.
And we're going to talk about some of it today with Void Rivals number 10.
Oh no, Void Rivals at the bottom of my stack. Here we go.
Oh no. We have opposing covers.
We do.
Alright, let's head over to the pull list rec.
Let's do it.
Alright, we have some wonderful pulls in the pull list rec this week. We have Drawing Blood, number 3, Void Rivals, number 10, William of Newbury, number 2, and Rook Exodus number 3. Then we've also got from DC Green Arrow number 13 and Absolute Power Ground Zero number 1. Jay, that is, of course,
Yes.
well, honestly, that's all I picked up this week.
I had it wasn't very there wasn't many, but I did have a few others.
What else did you grab this week?
And you already you spilled the you unburied the lead. I'm not gonna be able now to ask you if you picked anything else up because you already spoiled it for everybody.
I'm so sorry, everyone.
We have Action Comics 1066, TMNT Saturday Morning Adventures number 14, and after what feels like a really long hiatus, No One number 9.
I think it was a very long hiatus.
It felt very long. I feel like it's been forever since the last issue that came out. And I think it's a 12-issue series, too, so I have no clue what the hell's going on with a big gap between 8 and 9. But
well, we'll be catching up soon if we keep doing a massive verse book every month.
Yeah, we're going to be doing one, I think, in possibly a week or two, sometime soon.
I think the first week of the month is normally when we slide that in there.
Yeah. So soon.
And I think No One might be next. Could be wrong. Probably wrong.
I think you're wrong.
It might be another Radiant Black and then No One.
I think there's Radiant Black and Rogue Sun before No One.
Oh, I forgot about Rogue Sun. In any case.
And there might be multiple volumes of both of those before No One.
Well, we normally go chronologically. So, we interrupt full runs.
No, I just be like, No One's, pretty damn new. No One started last year. So Fair I think enough. We have a...
We'll consult the list at some point. But speaking of lists, we have our list of polls.
Lists!
Do you have an order in which you would like to talk about them?
Oh, we're going to end with DC. We'll end with Absolute Power. We'll end with the event book because maybe that's what people came here to see. I don't know.
There are time codes anyway.
There's time codes anyway. Do you want to start with Void Rivals? We'll keep the Energon universe going.
Hell yeah.
And then we have to do other Image books. So Rook Exodus. Is anything else Image?
I don't think
Drawing
so.
Blood.
Drawing Blood.
Yeah. Drawing Blood. And then we'll go to William of Newbury before Green Arrow, and then Absolute Power.
Rad.
Boom. Nailed it. No time to waste time. Void Rivals right now. Time codes below for all the polls. Do it.
Void Rivals number 10. Secrets of the Sacred Ring revealed. Void Rivals finally puts the Energon in their corner of the Energon universe. The writer here is Robert Kirkman of Invincible, The Walking Dead, and Oblivion Song. The artist is Lorenzo De Felici of Oblivion Song and Chroma. The colorist is Patricio Del Peche, and the letterer is Russ Wooten. Jay, you are a little bit of a Robert Kirkman fanboy.
Little bit.
You have been enjoying Arc 2.
Have said that.
Yes. You've been enjoying Arc 2 more than I have been enjoying Arc 2 as well.
I thought you liked the last issue.
I liked the last issue, but I'm saying you've been enjoying the arc overall more than I have.
Yes. I think I was more understanding of the pacing than you were maybe. I really liked. Well, the first thing is Void Rivals is just gorgeous. Lorenzo De Felici's art is so ridiculously good. The mood is so good, which Patricio Del Peche's coloring plays a major role in that. The opening. I love the opening of this. I love the villains in this book. They are that back presence, but it's such a cool back presence of them having these secret meetings and stuff. It's just always feels cool and feels important. They feel like villains to me. It's not they're just characters that are thrown there. It's okay, we'll beat them eventually. They feel intimidating. They feel kind of sneaky. I like it. But yeah, gorgeous looking book. I liked a lot of what they did in this one. I felt the way that they started actually I know we're not Transformers guys. We don't really have all the Transformers information, but the interweaving of the backstory with this comes from here and this comes from here. And it almost was also justification as to why this isn't a standalone book, which, fair. Cool thing to do. So, yeah, I thought things were coming together in a really interesting way. And it's just an awesome looking book. And this issue had a lot of action, which makes the awesome looking book really, really cool.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I do think the first two issues bit of a watch for me. These second two issues, I have greatly enjoyed. I think that it's really hitting its stride again. Now that they're not just walking across the desert. And my biggest gripe for the entire series has been like, oh, stop making it like Transformers. I don't understand. This isn't made for me anymore. But like you said, they're doing a really elegant job now that they're actually weaving the worlds together instead of essentially doing like kind of Easter eggy things. Because now that we're learning how the worlds blend together and the characters are learning how the worlds blend together, I feel like I'm being called in more than I was when it was just like, oh, this character definitely means something, but I don't know what. So I'm
fully good.
I'm super on board with that. And kind of like what we were talking about in the news segment, where it's like, oh, these skybound folks get to just play around in the universes that they love. It is really like gratifying to be like, oh, Robert Kirkman, you have written your world into the Transformers lore, and that's like part of Transformers lore, and that just, it keeps feeling so cool every time it happens.
Agreed. Yeah,
but what would
this is a really cool issue. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, let's get to it. But yeah, like this issue feels like a lot of what Robert Kirkman does best, which is just like making things feel important and epic, mm-hmm. and making the characters feel like intriguing and making me interested in what happens next. Another great issue ender, which is typical for this series. And for Kirkman, I'm very excited to see what comes next. Yeah, and for Kirkman in general. This is. I agree with you that the book is finally picking up steam. I like the other stuff more than you, but the last two issues I think, mm-hmm. have been fantastic. I gave this a 9 out of 10. Really enjoyed this. Thought it was a great issue.
Yeah, very, very fun stuff. I gave it an 8 out of 10. Very good, fun stuff. And like you said, just gorgeous art. Beautiful space art.
Oh my
beautiful
God.
Vibe.
Lorenzo Del Felice is so ridiculously good.
And it's wonderful because I love the way he does like the helmets on them.
Yes. That's why the one villain, what's his name? Zalalek or whatever? He has this like crazy helmet that like
a kind of chess piece looking motherfucker.
Yeah. And it's, I don't know, it feels like a Vader type thing to me where I'm like, nah, he's just, that's a villain right there. Oh, like you just know. You feel
absolutely. But yeah, rad. Issue 10, a pull list rec for you?
You get some context,
right? Honestly,
not great context, but I'll say yes. I'm gonna throw it to yes. I'm gonna throw out a yes.
I think this one is a fine place to jump in. Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Yep. Pull list rec for both of us. Official pull list rec for Void Rivals number 10.
There we go.
Jump in right now.
All right, but are we ready to
jump on over? Rook Exodus,
fly on over, rather.
Number 3. Fly on over.
Fly on over.
Rook Exodus number 3. As Rook and Direwolf are hunted by the Bear Warden Ursaw, they need allies to fight back. Direwolf takes them to a secret sanctuary called the Oasis, where we meet another enigmatic warden and his formidable crew. But can they be trusted? And whose side are they really on? Also, if you think you know how sick and twisted Ursaw is, you've seen nothing yet. The writer of this book is, of course, Jeff Johns, Green Lantern, Flash, Justice League. The artist is Jason Fabok, Batman, Justice League, Suicide Squad. The colorist is Brad Anderson. And the letterer is Rob Lay. We loved the first 2 issues, Katie. Why don't we get right into it? How did you feel about issue 3?
I like it a whole lot, as this series is like... This series very quickly has become one of my like big looking forward to it series. Yeah. Like every issue feels like it just, we've given this compliment before, it feels like such a comic book. Like it feels like such a comic book. Like from the costume design to the like vibes of it to just everything about it, it just feels so much like this is what I want a monthly pull to feel like. This issue specifically is very good at doing like both ramp and exposition, because I feel like what this book does really well that we've seen is exposition through character. And it's not that we're like told about something that happens or happened. It's we meet a character and their like core is defined by something that has happened. And so it's not that we learn too many details about something, but it's like, oh, this is why Carapace is the way that he is. And we can understand so much of the emotional weight of the history on the planet from the emotional weight of these characters and their severe reactions and their weird eccentricisms. And I dig that so much as like a delivery method for exposition.
Yeah, fully agree. Like what I felt like this issue really, really excelled at was world building. Like
Mm-hmm.
because of the way they get like plugged into this machine where they need three of them to like triangulate other wardens, which just has some fantastic artwork by Jason Fabok
Yes.
of like them plugged into this machine, and it's so good. It's so good.
And then
But
along with that, we get
helps
to see
us
all
see
of
so
these
many
other helmets.
Yeah, and that's what I was getting to, because like one, fantastic way to build out the world and show us all these characters, and two, like they've figured out through this concept like such a cool way to justify just all these like animal themed tech suits, which look so cool when you have an artist like Jason Fabok drawing them, and it's awesome and it's exciting. Like you said, there's great ramp here, and the opening of this issue is awesome and epic and
Yep.
interesting. And then like the first half of this issue is like just basically pure ramp. Like it's us building to the, it's us getting by and what's the turtle man's name again? Um, the
Turtle Man? You mean
yeah,
Carapace?
you know the main guy who they met. Yeah,
Yeah, Carapace.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
he's
you know,
so
the turtle
cool.
man. He controls
Yeah.
turtles.
No,
He's
that
a turtle
makes so much
He's a
more
turtle
sense.
shield.
It makes I was fully thinking about the previous issue where Rook is like almost murdered by a turtle, and I was like, I don't think there was a man there. But yeah, Carapace
No,
is
no,
the
yeah. Like we
Lord
get
of
kind of
Turtles.
this like looming presence of Carapace as like Rook is like introduced to him and follow it, and it's just really good ramp into them getting plugged into this machine, and like just that's when things kind of crescendo, and then you get the issue end, which is brutal,
So exciting.
brutal. It's just it's good all the way around. I really really enjoyed this issue, and they've been doing a good job with a lot of stuff.
They're doing such a good
I
job.
felt like the captions were a little bit more like annoyingly exposition-y in this issue. Like there were a few captions and a few pages of captions, especially toward the beginning, where I was like, you're going a little bit, I think, hard on that, but that's really my only critique. But yeah, do you want to slap a number on it, Kate?
I would love to slap a number on it. I will also say I'm very excited that the bond with your animals outside of the mask thing keeps coming up and keeps being like a looming
We talked
threat.
about that all the way back in issue 1.
Yeah, because it was a big deal with swine, and now it's becoming a big deal with what's her Direwolf. And we see this like conflict that Rook has with it. I'm very excited for that to be fulfilled. But numbered rating, I'm gonna give it an 8.5 out of 10. Because it was a lot of
agreement with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement with you. I give this an 8.5 out of 10 as well. But would you call it a pull list wreck?
I don't think it's a horrible place to jump on, because we kind of finished our stuff in the city with Rook, and they say a lot of things about what, like when they're talking about why Carapace doesn't like Rook, we get some of that going on, and they do explain why everything happened. I would say that I would prefer that you start out with issue 1, but honestly, this isn't a bad place to jump in story-wise.
I fully agree with you, especially though there's like I've seen reprints of issue 1 and I think issue 2 as well are out there, so you should be able to get yourself a copy of the earlier issues. But I agree, I'll call it a pull list wreck too. So full agreement across both of us, and our second straight pull list wreck. But do you want to move it to Drawing Blood?
I sure do. Let's do it. Drawing Blood number 3. A funeral, an angry widow, a talking statue, a crazed mob, a silent movie nightmare, and a face-off with murderous Lithuanian gangsters. It's another tricky day for Shane Books Bookman, a comic book creator who rode the roller coaster of fame and fortune and ended up in a whole lot of trouble. The writers here are Kevin Eastman and David Avallone. Kevin Eastman is also on the art in, there we go, Jay's already showing the pages on these wonderful flashback pages. Ben Bishop does the majority of the art for the book, and Troy Little comes in for some trippier little hallucinations type things. We've also got a colorist in Brittany Peer and a letter in Taylor Esposito. Pretty much everyone on this book has worked on some form of TMNT property. Troy Little, I think, being one of the only exceptions, with Rick and Morty and Cult of
David
Lamb being
Avalon, I think Ben Bishop's the only person who's worked on TMNT besides Kevin Eastman.
Well, you didn't put any other things next to his name, and I copied this exactly from when you wrote it. So I just assumed that he had done
I apologize.
Turtles things.
I apologize.
It's all right. It's your fault, and that's fine.
It is my fault. Everything's my fault.
But what an exciting issue. Because they've all worked on this book, at least.
They have.
What an exciting
That's
issue.
True.
You love this. You read this when it was coming out on Kickstarter. You've got all of your...
Yeah, the first 6 issues.
Yeah.
Because 7 through 12 have still not come from the Kickstarter yet. Hopefully that will happen. But,
I got my fingers crossed for you, brother. But how are you feeling about issue 3, reading it as it's coming out just through Image?
I liked it a whole lot. I really like this issue because it's so much of just like Books being kicked when he's down. Like it's just so much of sucky life. It's got I feel like the balance in this issue and the second issue of like shitty past his prime creator and Lithuanian mob is much better than the first issue in my opinion. I think the first issue was a little bit too much Lithuanian mob for my taste, whereas I like the balance more where it's like, yeah, here's this really shitty creator life, and then every now and then when it's like, maybe he gets a break, or maybe he just needs to get through, and then it's just, here's the Lithuanian mob again to just tighten those, bolts a little bit more on him. So yeah, I really like that balance here. And just to talk about the like other artists' work in here, though I should say Ben Bishop's art is fantastic.
It is.
The whole thing, but like Kevin Eastman does in like most of these issues, he does like one front and back page or like 2 pages. And yet it's so emotional because it's usually like the flashback. It's usually like the crux of the emotion of the issue. And he's so good at it. And Troy Little does a fantastic job on the hallucination as well. So it's just, it all plays so well together with a pretty big creative team. And I think this issue is really great. It's a good blend of the kind of 2 things we have going on. And it just, I don't know, it hits, I think, as a like creator. When you're reading it as a creator, I think it kind of hits. I don't know how you feel about that, but I think it hits.
No, I hear that, and I think the biggest thing that you point out is the way that all of the other ways Books' life is going to shit are on display in this issue. Like, we get it a bit with the other issue with like his Broadway show, but I feel like this issue we have so many shitty things coming together.
Oh yeah.
That it's like, honestly, for me, it was a relief when he was driven off by the Lithuanian mob instead of the mob of, like, fans. And, like, because the absolute, like, pit in my stomach when his friend was making jokes at the funeral and you could see the wife of Frank, Miranda, just, like, giving them death glares. Like, I wanted to vomit through that entire sequence, and then when she like slapped, oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh, I was like, thank God that the Lithuanians are just guys with guns. Like, honestly,
they were like, they're supposed to kill him until they
Katie.
took. I love that scene too, because just because it's like it's a good use of like nothing's funny in world, but it's funny to a reader where they're like, 85%. He's like 75. No, you're 85. You're right.
You're right. 85 is good.
Yeah. And that's like my favorite kind of humor, where it's like we find it funny, but nobody in the world is like making a joke while Lithuanians are about to murder him. Like
right.
I love that. I love the way that lands.
No, it's super, super well done. But you love this series. Numbered rating, have you?
I'm gonna throw a 9 out of 10 on this one. Ooh. I like this issue a hell of a lot. It's a lot of fun. And it leaves off on one of my favorite pages, kind of leading into the next issue, which I think is my favorite issue of the first 6, if I remember correctly. So I'm very excited to talk to you about issue 4 when we get there next month.
I am super psyched to get there as well, because I I gave this one an 8.5 out of 10. I think that it's really, really good. I think it's really fun. I really liked a lot of the stuff we got with Frank, who is the dead guy, whose debt has been passed on to books that he is now recovering. The detail about, and I'll hold this to myself so that dear readers can experience it. The detail about what he did before he died,
Oh
or
yeah,
like,
it's
you know,
so good.
yeah,
It's
so good. And then
brutal.
pairing that with a flashback. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. And Books' emotions around Frank's death, we get to really explore in this one as well.
And like the art switch
Incredibly
in the
good.
same page with that flashback there, so good.
Yes. Oh my god, so good. But yeah, so 8.5. I would not say a pull list track though.
I
You
don't
gotta
think so
start this
either. I
one from
think
the
this,
beginning.
yeah. Drawing Blood's really a series that you should read. Is which not to be surprised on a book that releases a Kickstarter where you got all 6 issues at the same time. So yeah, this is one I think best read when you were reading through issue by issue.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
yeah, but that ends out the image books, I believe, of the
Now
week.
it's
So
time for Dark Horse.
William of Newbury.
Yeah.
William of Newbury, number 2. Pursued by outlaws and the monastery, William and Winnie encounter demon-stealing souls from soldiers while devils and angels battle in the sky. Arriving in Berwick, they are told about an ill-tempered merchant who died and soon began to shamble about town. After an ominous encounter at a fairy mound, William and Winnie are ambushed by knights as their adventures catch up with them. Find out what happens in this medieval horror fit for any age. The writer, artist, colorist, letterer, doing the whole book is Michael Avon Oming from Powers, Red Sonja, and Action Comics. Katie, we enjoyed William of
Yes.
Newbury number 1.
Yes.
How do you feel about the continuation?
I
Issue
like number
2.
2 quite a bit. I do. It said in the wonderful spoiler filled description there.
Yeah,
Kind
it
of
just it feels like a recap
right,
of the entire book more than like
right, which was odd
a
for
blur.
a recap that or
Yeah.
for a blurb they were putting out. I wish that their adventures were not catching up to them. Like I really liked when we started the book. As it says, there's like a little like maybe 3 page encounter like on a battlefield, and then they deal with
Yes.
this like ghost of the merchant, which is what they were called to the town for. And I was getting really hyped because I was like, oh my gosh, this will be like phenomenal format, in my opinion, if they're like very vignette focused. And it's like just these cute little adventures, essentially, where it's like, here's our little problem today, almost like a Monster of the Week style
Yeah,
book.
yeah.
And I was really, really enthused about that. And then we're at the end of issue 2, and the problem that was set up in issue 1 is already catching up to us. And I'm like, I feel like maybe that was too quick for that to have come forth so quickly. And like, it just left me a little bummed because I don't know what the series, I don't know what the plot is going to look like going forward, because we didn't have much of like an overarching plot going on before in the first issue.
Yeah,
Like
I mean,
we
they
had
set up they set up the thing with his brother, right? It's his brother. I think.
yeah. I think it might be a biblical brother though, like a cloistered thing, because
That
he's a
makes sense.
rabbit
That's
and
right.
William is a raccoon.
Well, you know, who knows how these worlds where everybody's different species really work? Like you could,
You got me there. You got me there.
Yeah.
So I'm like
Yeah,
a little apprehensive about what our plot is going to be with that catching up to us so soon, but it's still incredibly cute. Like that at the end of the day, when we talk about things like Giant Robot Hellboy or Monsters on My Business, it's like it's just good fun. This is just cute fun, and I'm still enjoying it greatly, even if I'm a bit apprehensive going forward. How did you feel
Yeah.
about it?
The interesting thing is, I think we both have very similar like end takeaways, but for very different reasons.
Oh.
If that makes sense.
It
Because
will once I know your reasons.
Yeah, I also sat here and went, well, I think it's fun. I think it's enjoyable. I think the art's fantastic. I think it's cute, but the like overarching plot is like what is leaving me to be desired. But for like, I think the inverse reason of you is that I'm not enjoying the like villain of the week stuff nearly as much as like kind of the more of our. I enjoyed the first thing a lot, where like I enjoyed the William and Winnie like banter back and forth at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed them finding the like soldier who was like dying and kind of that initial battle. I was really not pulled in or intrigued at all by the merchant story in this issue. I
That is
don't
fair.
know why it didn't land for me really at all. I wasn't super invested in it. They didn't really, I don't know, get me much. I didn't think the characters really had much going on while they went through that plot. Like it felt
Mm-hmm.
more like they were kind of just like in, you know, like the difference between like active and inactive protagonists. It felt
Yeah.
kind of like inactive protagonists for that chunk of this story, which was like the major chunk of this
Mm-hmm.
issue, which I didn't love. And then like the ending, I was like, okay, at least maybe now we'll get the plot on track. But I do agree with you with the takeaway of like, I don't know if this is meant to be a villain of the week book or if it's meant to be an overarching plot book. I feel like they're trying to juggle both and they're not. I say they. It's just Michael. I feel like he's trying to like do both, but maybe doesn't really know which way he wants to commit or how he's fully structuring it. Because it's like you said, like if it was meant to be like a villain of the week thing, like it's felt so far with like just this one overarching plot that'll come back at the end, like this is too early for it to come. So like, what's it gonna look like? That's my question. But I, like you said, it is still just like good, cute fun, which is enjoyable.
Exactly, yeah.
It's still very good.
It is.
But yeah.
It
Anyway,
is.
do you want to slap a number on it?
Yeah. I mean, we love a writer artist, but I will say cute can only get you so far. I gave this one a 6.5 out of 10.
We're in full agreement on that. I also
Perfect.
land on a 6.5 out of 10.
Because like
this
it's
one.
cute, it's fun, it's a little directionless.
Yeah, agreed.
But are we ready to move on to good old Detective Comics with Green Arrow?
I was so confused for a second.
I was full naming DC.
Yeah, I got it. You should have said then those Detective Comics. Like that was your mistake.
No, it's just DC. It's not DC Comics. I don't care what they say. Comics. I don't care what they say. They're wrong.
Comics. You screwed up. Let's go over to good old Detective Comics.
Ugh, for Green Arrow. Green Arrow number 13. Oliver Queen becomes an agent of the Wall. Roy and the rest of the Green Arrow family want to know why Green Arrow would betray his family and friends and choose to work with Amanda Waller and her deadly plans for the heroes and villains of the DC universe. I don't know why I started saying it all like that, but the writer here is Joshua Williamson of Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths, Superman, The Flash. The artist is Amanke Nahupen, who is new on the Green Arrow series, but has worked on Crush and Lobo, Justice League Dark, and Hawkgirl. The colorist is Romulo Fajardo Jr., and the letterer is Troy Peteri. Jay, we just finished the first 12 issues of Green Arrow. I think we're pretty...
What was originally supposed to be the series.
Yeah. And it felt like it. Like, it felt like a big ending when we finished issue 12. Like, it felt like a very definitive, like, this is the end.
Yes.
And now we're jumping back in. So it feels like we're in a completely different set of arc now.
Yes.
Which, like you said, with it initially being a 12-issue miniseries, it basically is. How are you feeling about our first issue here? And relatedly, how it ties into Absolute Power?
Yeah. The first time, it feels a little bit disjointed because they had to kind of get to Absolute Power. Like, the way that we get here from last issue and the beginning of this issue feels a little disjointed from the rest of this issue. Mm-hmm. So, put that to the side because that's like the little, that criticism. I think it's a solid issue. I like a focus on Roy. I always like a focus on Roy. Roy is a good character. I like Roy. I think the kind of build and tension and the arc in this issue is really good. I don't love the positioning of the reader in terms of Ollie and what he's thinking. It's Green Arrow's book. I feel like in a character's book you should never not be following them when they're heavily involved with something. Mm-hmm. I don't love that.
Or at the very least, we shouldn't have to follow them.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing, I think Roy was great in this issue for the most part, but otherwise, I was a little bit lacking on the Joshua Williamson writing characters so well in the sense of we get this big scene of Dinah like going in and trying to talk and like everybody ignoring her, and I was like, that doesn't feel like the family that you've set up in, like everything else that we've read of your Green Arrow family. So I was like, that felt a little weird. And then like the rest of the issue was mostly not character moments, so that was something that was kind of stuck in my head. But overall, I think it's a really solid issue. I think there's once we hit the like the build solid, and then once we hit that ramp like toward the end, I don't want to talk about the ending, but there's a great encounter between Roy and Oliver that I think is phenomenal. And again, would work better in a book not called Green Arrow, because the fact that we're essentially seeing it from Roy's perspective instead of Ollie's feels a bit off. But yeah, overall, I think it's a very solid issue. I don't know about its place in Absolute Power. Like, obviously, it's heavily placed in Absolute Power, but like reading then the Absolute Power issue, it doesn't like kind of directly get us anything. So I don't know. That's my feelings. It's very sporadic, but that's my feelings.
I will say I'm particularly grumpy about its place within Absolute Power, because the previous 12 issues, the first 6 issues, were trying to find Ollie. The second 6 issues were trying to find Roy. And we got the end of it, and it was like, yay, now we can all be a family again. And they're immediately like, okay, Ollie's going off and working for Waller and is like cutting off from his family. And it's like, we literally just did this. Like, we just did this. Yeah. And I will say, I didn't read Dinah's interaction in that first one as people like ignoring her as much as it was like just like kind of busy.
Yeah, I read this, but like when you're right like, because of the way that the comic book medium works, like she's standing right next to these people that are just actively ignoring her. Which
for sure. What I was going to say is that my gripe with it, because that didn't gripe me too bad, but my gripe was that we have like the lingering question of her being like, "Where's Ollie?" And then we get an answer because we see Ollie with Waller, but the family doesn't. And then Roy just like happens across him on his mission, and it's like, have you not been? Again, when the past 12 issues have been all about how important it is that you come together as a family again and how much you love each other as a family, feels a little weird to just be like, oh, where's Ollie? We don't know. I guess that's that.
Yeah.
No further action. Like, I wouldn't want there to be further action, but it bothered me within the context of it.
It's the rough thing of like its place within the DC. Like, it's not just Absolute Power. Like, Birds of Prey keeps fucking over Green Arrow.
Yes.
Like, the fact that Birds of Prey is happening is fucking over Green Arrow so much, in the sense of like Dinah has to keep being like, yes, I'm one of those important people to Ollie, so when this stuff happens I have to be involved, but also I need to go do my thing, so bye.
And like the thing is, she should be able to do her thing, but then maybe write her out of Green Arrow for a hot minute, now that they've like it was a very weird thing.
Like, that's kind of what this issue felt like, but like it's just a weird way to put, because like the rough thing is that like in certain books it works where it's like, you can be here sometimes and there sometimes, but then you do something like, I don't know where Birds of Prey is at this point, but where it started was very much in like we're gonna be in this all the time, this is like an all-encompassing mission. So if they're still doing stuff like that, it just doesn't really leave her an area to keep being in this book. But also when you're building around the Green Arrow family so much, I understand the fact that you can't then just say, sorry, Dinah's not going to be involved, because like she is so important to that family and to being Oliver's significant other right now. Unless you like, honestly, the best way to do it, which I'm not going to suggest because editorial this happens because of editorial way too often, but it would be to break the two of them up, because that would probably work for what they're doing with Ollie right now. Like, if you have Ollie's gonna work for Amanda Waller and not tell anybody why, like that feels like a pretty good setup to break him up with Dinah, so that you don't have to deal with this.
But I feel like it's also something that you can't do after 12 issues of being like, we love each other and it's so important that we're all together.
I know, and that's why like the editorial and the placement of books sucks so much, because it's like,
it does.
How do you balance it? But anyway,
I feel like with the first arc of Birds of Prey, I haven't finished it yet, but I think it's supposed to be kind of like contained thing. Like, they're doing this one mission and it's like not a long mission, so it's like, okay, whatever, that happens. But in this one, she was like, well, I have to get back to the Birds of Prey and Sin, so I better boogie. And it's like, your husband is missing again.
Yeah. That's the rough thing, is like, because when it's like, okay, from a telling stories and book perspective, we want the character instead of here, but like when you think of the characterization, it's like there's no way the character would choose that over this. And
Yeah.
like that's the rough thing. It's like, yes, from an editorial standpoint, like yes, you want Black Canary in the Birds of Prey book over in the Green Arrow book. Like that makes sense from an editorial standpoint. But from a character standpoint, there's no way she's picking doing a Birds of Prey mission over finding her husband who's missing. Like there's no way to justify that.
Here's the true vibe. If they just said nothing, it wouldn't be an issue. Like, I feel like they could get away with just, like, not saying anything.
I think like any writer for DC or Marvel except Joshua Williamson would do that. Like Joshua Williamson is so heavy on like continuity and the way things fit together.
He's so invested in like the world as it's happening.
Yeah, there's no way he's not giving the best he can justification for why characters aren't in certain places.
But just don't say anything and we'll assume she's there during her free time. Okay, but I think we've talked about Green Arrow long enough.
We have.
Do you have a numbered rating to throw on it?
Yeah, I gave this a 7.5 out of 10 because I do like the build quite a bit. I love it's Roy focused. Like that is a cheat code.
That is a cheat code for Jay.
And
yeah,
I do think I think once we go on Roy's mission, I think everything on Roy's mission, and I should say Roy and Leanne's mission, is really, really strong. Agreed. And I think Roy, Leanne, and Cheshire are all written really, really well.
And they're so cute.
That
is adorable.
Yeah, that carries this issue for me, even though I don't love us being in the dark with Ollie in his own book.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
That's so fair. Yeah, I landed on a 6.5. I think it's because after getting that catharsis at the end of issue 12, it felt kind of like unjustified to break them all up again, and it really carried through the entire thing for me where I'm like, okay, we've just been through this together. Stop.
That's fair. That's fair. But do we want to continue talking about Absolute Power with Absolute Power Ground Zero?
Let's do it. Oh, I suppose I would not call 13 a Polis Wreck. I think that I'm
not going to give it a unilateral Polis Wreck because I think if you're planning on jumping back into Green Arrow and like just for Green Arrow, probably wait until after Absolute Power is over. Mm-hmm. But I'll say like, if you want to read like the Absolute Power, like it's a solid issue for a tie-in if you're looking for one of the tie-in issues to read. And I don't know, it might end up being important. I don't think it's something that you shouldn't pull, but I also wouldn't give it a like unilateral pull this rack. In any case, Ground Zero.
Ground Zero.
Absolute Power, Ground Zero. Witness the Trinity of Evils rise to power in the can't-miss prelude to DC's summer blockbuster. The dominoes fall as the DC Universe braces for the Absolute Power Blitzkrieg. The key to capturing metahuman powers on planet Earth will at last be unlocked. Bridging the events of Batman, Superman, House of Brainiac, and Suicide Squad Dream Team, this special oversized Ground Zero issue brings Waller's total dominance to the doorsteps of the world's finest heroes. Using the combined might of Failsafe, Brainiac Queen, and the Suicide Squad to do it. The writers on this book are Mark Waid, Chip Zdarsky, Nicole Maines, and Joshua Williamson. The artists are Dan Mora, Gleb Milenkov, Skylar Patridge, and V. Ken Marion. The letters are Steve Wands and Ariana Menhir, and the colorists are Patricio Del Pecci and Alejandro Sanchez. I was really stumbling on that. I am sorry.
We gave Jay a list of names. That's, never fair.
It's the worst thing. It's the worst thing for me.
I didn't expect Alejandro to be the one to trip you up, though.
Yeah. So aside from finding out that the original leaks of the Trinity Evil were off on one character, evidently, how did you like meeting the Trinity of Evil? It's a failsafe instead of Batman of Zur-En-Arrh.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. Yeah. I maintain that it's incredibly silly to me that they have Failsafe and Brainiac Queen and not a Wonder Woman villain to be the other leg of the Trinity.
Amanda Waller. Amanda Waller's the Wonder Woman villain. What are you talking about? She probably has interacted with Wonder Woman at least once in DC Comics history.
I don't know. I feel like of all of the Trinity for Amanda Waller to have interacted with, I would say maybe least likely is Diana. Like,
I
you
don't know what
know,
you're talking about, man. They've interacted at least once. I'm sure
name
somebody
one
can
time.
probably tell us. I'm sure it's happened. Probably.
I bet it's also happened, but name one time, coward.
It's probably I almost guarantee you it's happened in the current Wonder Woman series. Amanda Waller's popped up in every major DC title recently.
You know, fair enough. I'll give you that one. So, so this is our Trinity of
You're
Evil.
right, though. To be clear, I am
And
completely epic with you.
I do like the vibes. I will say, I think specifically, Failsafe and Brainiac Queen are. I really like what we got about Brainiac Queen because I have not been reading House of Brainiac, and I don't think Brainiac Queen is even really connected to that. Like she was a blank slate.
I have the issues. I've been picking up Action Comics, but I've not read House of
Um,
Brainiac yet.
but yeah, I think Failsafe is neat to look at, but a little bit boring. Where it's just, oh, I'm Batman, but better.
You've been reading Batman, right?
I
So, like, what's
am not
the
caught
vibe
up
on
to
that front? Okay,
any of that.
sorry.
No,
That's fine. It's funny. We each for each of the characters, each one of us is pulling a different one of it, and if we both read the books that we're getting, we would be really able to help each other with what's going on right now.
Yeah, too bad. And I don't think either one of us was reading Suicide Squad Dream Team.
Why would I voluntarily get more Peacemaker and Amanda Waller?
Yeah, no, so fair, same. Yeah, I like the vibe that we got from Brainiac Queen specifically because we see Amanda Waller use what I thought was going to be. I mean, it does use Sanctuary, so I like that it used Sanctuary, and then she like used her own tech with it as well. I love that she used that. We see her like raise Brainiac Queen from like a little blank slate robot to her like own personal pawn, and I feel like that was a really good like Amanda Waller style move. Especially they kind of glance over it a little bit, but one of them makes a comment about like, wait, Waller, you were just in that machine for what to your brain felt like 20 years. Are you good? And she's like,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. But I feel like that type of self-sacrifice and that sort of like that felt like such a good baller Amanda Waller move. Amanda Baller move, if you will. Failsafe, a little boring, in my opinion. And the Suicide Squad, I mean, they're as fun as the people you put on the team. It looks like Deadshot and Dreamer are definitely going to be there. And I liked Deadshot's vibe.
I like
Dreamer,
that drawing of Deadshot right now. I did think the Dreamer story was the weakest out of the three stories here. And weirdly, I agree with you that Failsafe's the least interesting, but I thought the Time Commander story was the best out of this.
Yes,
I really liked the Time
liked
Commander
his story. Yeah.
I liked his story a lot. I thought it was really good. And that's the weird thing. Like, I like 2 out of the 3 of the stories in this quite a bit, but I don't know that it made me go like, absolute power. Yeah. You know, like that's the weird thing. Like I thought they were good stories, but I don't think they like set up this event to be something that I'm like hyped for.
No. But it's got so much working against it. Like I feel like I've been sort of dreading absolute power for months.
You know what it has working against it? It has Amanda Waller and Peacemaker working against it.
And like the thing is, again, the way that we see Amanda Waller do stuff in this issue, I feel like is pretty good, like what I would want out of Amanda Waller. Where it's like she's blackmailing Dreamer, so bad things happen. She like psychologically tortures the Time Dude, and that's rad. The like going into Sanctuary to raise this child, essentially, is Amanda Waller. But like it doesn't have any hype about the event.
And no. Because like I didn't love the positioning her in the first story, because that felt more like evil Amanda Waller, because like kidnapping the family of like a superhero and then like, you know, murdering that guy's, I don't know how she murdered that guy's parents, but
that's Superboy's boyfriend. That's Jay Not Good. Yeah. He's also like a kind of press vigilante. He runs like a blog, I think, called The Truth.
So murdering his parents also seemed like just a complete like evil.
Well, murdering the president of a sovereign nation feels very stock Amanda Waller. I don't think she specifically murdered him or murdered her. Like, I don't think Amanda Waller pushed her out the window. So like being responsible for the death of a sovereign leader feels very standard Amanda Waller to me.
But I agree with you. Like the Time Commander story felt a lot like, you know, just like the kind of thing that I like out of her. Brainiac Queen, like, yeah, fine, but yeah, I don't know that I love the placement of Amanda Waller in this event, especially because like the reason she's getting failsafe is like essentially to be able to kill Batman.
Yeah.
And then like a team, and it's like, I don't know, Amanda Waller being like, I should kill Batman doesn't feel very Amanda Waller-y. What feels Amanda Waller-y is Amanda Waller creating another Batman because she thinks the world needs Batman, which is something that she has done. Like, so this feels like the inverse of what Amanda Waller does, because we're going from a character who thinks the world always needed a Batman to now being like, I'm going to murder Batman. Like, that's where I'm like,
I mean, I assume that she's, the fact that she is like essentially grooming the Trinity of Evil is like the vibe of like she's going to have control over them. But like, yeah, it just doesn't. And I feel like I don't know her plan, which is a bummer, because I thought that's kind of what
I feel like my vibe with Absolute Power and with her making like an army of Batman killers is that like it's going to be her versus the Trinity essentially, and that's going to also love the Trinity out of on a cover to an issue that they're not really in.
They are, really is a strong word. They're not in it.
Superman's in the preview.
Okay, but they already released the preview, so I'm not counting the preview as content in here. I think we saw that on Free Comic Book Day.
They are considering it. But in any case, yeah. So like, I don't know. Amanda Waller going after the Trinity really doesn't super seem like her vibe to me. So I don't know. It's definitely her current vibe. I don't know. Her current vibe is just like evil. I don't know what her like current vibe. Like I don't know how. And maybe it'd be better if we were getting more of her justifications. Like it's more of, they've turned Amanda Waller into like more stoic and like, I'm just going to do things. Whereas I feel like Amanda Waller used to be a character who talked a lot in like justifying why she has to do things the way that she's doing them, which helps you understand how in her mind it's an ends justify the means and not like just I'm going to murder a bunch of people and take control because I want power. You know?
Like the thing is, you can get really good villains who are like, oh, we shouldn't have superheroes because they're dangerous. Like Lex Luthor, great villain, same motivation of like, oh, we can't control if they decide to kill us. Can we talk about the fact
this whole story would work a lot better if Lex Luthor was the main villain instead of Amanda Waller?
It would work so well. It would work so well if it was Lex Luthor. And then instead of Brainiac Queen, they could have a Wonder Woman villain.
No, you'd actually. I mean, if you did Lex, it would be better. And honestly, they should do it with Amanda Waller. It would have been better if Lex just wasn't making himself one of the Trinity of Evil. You know, so like it was still like Brainiac Queen, you know, failsafe, and then he also had like a Wonder Woman killing thing. You know, so like he created something to kill each of the things.
I am still only a few issues into Tom King's Wonder Woman. I have not felt motivated to read very much more. But like we have a Wonder Woman book going on right now. Both Failsafe and Brainiac Queen are like new villains.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
like,
isn't
Chip Zdarsky created Failsafe.
Yeah. Isn't Wonder Woman fighting like the government right now, so they can't really like make it. They can't
yes, but editorial. You knew Absolute Power was coming.
Oh yeah. They don't care.
You could even have like
They don't care. They don't care. What are you talking about?
Like DC, why? Why do you make
DC? Why is the question? Like, and again, like, not a bad issue. Like the actual content in here is pretty good.
I enjoyed 2 of the 3 stories. The Dream
well done. Yeah, I agree. Fully agree.
But do you have a number?
Stop shoving Amanda Waller in every event.
Stop.
Like, why is she the new event? It's like she's dark. She's like she literally has become Darkseid somehow. Like she's the character they're shoving in every event. Like
she didn't really make.
I'm
like,
sorry.
Is Absolute Power supposed to be connected to Beast World in some way, or is she just not like resolved on the Beast World stuff?
It's connected to Beast World, which is connected to Night Terrors, which is like
because
like. The last 3 events have all been like current Amanda Waller plans, essentially.
And like, why?
Why? I don't know.
Why not let the event end? Anyway,
because they don't have another idea.
Numbered ratings. I can't talk about Absolute Power any longer.
Yeah. Again, it's a good like 2 out of 3 stories are good. It's a 7 out of 10. Like it was enjoyable. I'm just not excited for the event.
You know, I didn't write down a rating for this one. And you said 7 out of 10, and I'm like, that seems high. But then I thought 6.5, that seems low. So I'm going to go with a 7. We'll give it
I
a
thought you were
7
going to
out
go
of
the
10.
6.75 once you said
No,
of that.
I
You were
will
like,
not
I'll
invoke your
split the
father's
difference.
ire.
But yeah, I don't. I mean, like, it feels wrong not to call it a Polis Rec because it was a good like prelude to an
It
event.
was. We're
So
both
like,
just very jaded about absolute power. And I think that
and Amanda
factors
Waller.
into it.
Here's the
And
thing:
Amanda Waller.
don't pull it if you're burnt out on Amanda Waller because it will not make you happy. If you are somehow not burnt out on Amanda Waller at this point, then great. Read this. I don't know how you're not. Go watch the Suicide Squad anime too, and you can have all your Amanda Waller fun. But yeah, I'm burnt out on Amanda Waller, so
Yeah,
I'm not going to
I'll
call
call
it
it
a
a
Polis
pull list
Rec.
rec as well if you're
No, I said I'm not. I said I'm not
Oh,
because you know what? I do it on vibes, and my vibe is I'm
fair
burnt
enough.
out. But if you're not burnt out,
I'm
you
gonna
can
call it a
it.
pull list rec specifically if you aren't going into it already jaded about the event. Which
Yeah,
I hope that if you knew nothing about the event, our discussion here did not jade you on it.
I'm sorry.
Because maybe it'll be fun. Mark Waid is writing
Again,
it. Dan Moore is drawing it.
when it comes to the creatives, they've done a good job.
Yeah.
The stories in there are good. Our problems are editorial and just long-term burnout on overuse of characters that become popular.
Yes.
So.
But that is going to take us to the end of our pull list rec for the week. We had a couple good ones in there. Remember to pick up, I think we said yes for Void Rivals number 10 and Rook Exodus number 3.
Yes.
So be sure to grab those, guys, if you haven't already, because they are our official pull list recs. But now it is time for the Creator Corner.
Let's do it.
All right, gang, here we are in the Creator Corner, where we sit back, relax, talk about being writers, talk about making books, talk about storytelling, talk about all that good stuff. Today, we are going to talk about something that I think is hard to get hard and fast rules for, which is why I think it's going to be an interesting one to talk about so that we can try to figure out some actual tips. But I think it's incredibly important and is something that you and I both deeply take into account when we're talking about how much we like a book. And this is about setting tone in your comic.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's a tough one to talk about.
Yeah, because it's pretty ambiguous. It's a very collaborative thing. Because first of all, it's so dependent on the artist that you're working with. 100%. If you are working with another artist, even the letterer and the colors that you're working with, everything needs to work together to contribute to tone. When we look at something like Morning Star, which we've been reading, they do a really good job of having that cohesive team where everyone is really working towards that same vibe, and that helps them all, reach that vibe together. And then you look at something like what we read this week, William of Newbury, where it's one guy doing the whole thing, so he's able to create this atmosphere really well. So Jay, when you're writing a book, obviously you know the story you're going to do, yada yada. You've made all of the big decisions about what the tone is going to be.
Yes.
Are there any tips or steps that you take to try to nail that down and make sure it gets on the page?
Yeah. Well, there's definitely the things that you can do, and then there's the things that you can try your best to lead the artist or collaborate with the artist to get there, because at the end of the day, there's a lot that the artist is going to be able to control with the tone that, like, no matter how you write something, if they are going to draw it a certain way, like, that's going to be the tone. So you're going to have to, like, talk with your artist or collaborate with their and figure out that. But I have, like, two main things I want to talk about that are so vastly, like, on different planets. So I have to decide which one to
pick
go to
one
first.
And we'll start.
Yeah. So I'll start with this one. I'll start on the writing side, and then we'll talk, I think, at some point about the collaborating with artists to actually figure out that side of the tone. But from a writing perspective, I think one of the number one things, and here's the first thing from a writing perspective, is when it comes to the tone of your book, and this is something that I think a lot of people who are new to writing comics are not going to understand. The tone to a reader is not going to come across from your panel descriptions. Obviously, that'll help indicate and lead an artist, and you can always that. But like, if you're writing something super dramatically in your panel description, that doesn't mean now your reader's going to read it as dramatic if your dialogue isn't dramatic or whatever like that. So
Mm-hmm.
dialogue and captions are going to play a much larger role, which is also why what I'll say is I think comic books are the medium on top of everything else where you can really screw yourself over by kind of trying to play both sides or trying to lean into both tones. Most often that's going to come from somebody trying to inject humor into a book that isn't, like if your book is a book that's supposed to have a fun or humorous or enjoyable tone, like having jokes throughout isn't a problem. But if you're trying to inject humor into your book that's serious, that's, any tone that besides fun or humorous or something that goes along with humor, you can really shoot yourself in the foot in comics because the text on the page is one of the few ways you as the writer have to influence the tone. So if you have this moment that's supposed to be serious, it's supposed to be sad, but you're like, oh, maybe I should give the reader a little bit of humor. So here's this funny line. And then that's really the only impact you're putting on the page.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be hard for the reader to come away with, the more serious tone with your joke. This is something that I think is like going to come from people who are newer to comic books or aren't as involved in comic books and watch a lot of, like TV and movies. Like if you watch the MCU and then try to do that in comic books, I'd argue that it doesn't always even land correctly in the MCU, but
I don't think anyone would fight back.
It really doesn't land in comic books if you try to do their style of humor throughout a book that's going to have, more serious stakes or something like that. So,
and I will say on that, I think one of the biggest factors to consider when you're trying to do tone through dialogue is that it is written dialogue. Like, you don't have an actor delivering the line like you do in the MCU. Say you're trying to write like a sarcastic or snarky character, you don't necessarily have the charm of, I don't know, Aubrey Plaza to bring that, to give charisma to that vibe. And that's, I think, one of the ways that you end up with like shittily written kid characters when it's like, oh, hello, adult. You think I'm dumb, but I'm actually very smart. And it's just very insufferable with comics because you don't have that charisma coming off the page. No matter how good your artist is, you're still, kind of reading the joke happen. Yes. And as much as you can try to get that emotion, and kind of like what you were saying about having, I am a very flowery writer. We know this. So my panels will occasionally get a little florid. But it's important to speak clearly in the panel, because the panel, like you said, the panel description is not what the reader is reading.
Yeah.
If you want something to feel sad, you don't say, and a gentle tear formed in her eye. You say, no, she is sad.
Yeah.
Because your artist will do that.
Let me, because I think that I'll give you kind of the two ways that I've seen people write panels, and I'll tell you kind of why I think one is more effective than the other. You can either write your long, like you like there on her knees and a tear slowly drips down her cheek and that, or you can write character on her knees crying, I want this to feel sad to the audience. And doing something much more like tell them exactly what's there and then just write after how you want it to feel to a reader. And that will probably be more effective for the artist to then convey the tone. And I think tags like that, and some people don't love that, but I've always felt like it's worked really well with artists that I worked with, which is just like put the thing and then put whatever the tag is, which is like, because if you are writing like a knight comes up and like jams a sword through this person, like, and you don't give any indication to your artist, they could draw that in a way where the knight seems heroic and epic and it's this cool action shot. Or they could draw it in a like sad way where it's like, oh my god, like this person just got shish kebabbed on a sword.
Yeah.
And like those are going to be drawn completely differently. So just, you can write the same panel description and then write a tag of like, this should be sad to audience. This should be, epic. This should be this like this climactic moment. Something like that to indicate to an artist when a panel is important and what emotion they should be trying to get out of a reader is very effective in kind of helping to have a joint tone between your writing and the artist's artwork.
Exactly. No, yeah. Especially, and that doesn't mean that you can't like write tony panel descriptions. Again, I can't help it. That's how I write. I would be writing incredibly slowly if I was just being very mechanical. But having those tags on afterwards is super helpful. Like, you were just recently reading over an anthology submission that I had written, and you gave me
Yeah.
a couple panels where you're like, I feel like maybe you went a little too far with your description on this one. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, rad. It was helpful when I was writing it because it helped me stay in that like emotional place as I was going down the page. But on reading it back through, like, okay, yeah, that probably not actually a helpful panel description for someone. Let's change it up.
Yeah, because that's really that like because like you said, there's nothing wrong with it being flowery. Where it becomes a problem is when it then becomes hard for the artist to actually understand what they're meant to be drawing.
Exactly.
Like when you are describing a like moving scene, or you are getting so deep into flowery and symbolic language that it becomes especially because there's a good chance that you might be working with an artist that doesn't speak English as their first language. And if you are going deep into metaphors and similes and stuff like that, like they might just not understand through translation or through them reading in their second language what you mean. So yeah,
Or honestly, even reading in your first language. If you're speaking in metaphors, you're like, by definition, not speaking clearly.
Oh yeah. No, 100%. It's just, it goes even further when you start going into these
exactly,
like, other cases. So yeah, nothing wrong with being flowery, but just understand that there's a point where you're going to confuse your artist more than you are helping. Like
exactly.
always,
you should never
in
be
the description
just flowers.
Should be, yeah.
Your flowers need roots.
Like,
does that metaphor work?
Yeah, sure. Like you can absolutely, it's still creative, it's still whatever, but at the end of the day, when you were writing a comic book script, particularly the panel descriptions, you were essentially writing like an instruction manual for an artist. Like it is how they are going to see what they are, putting on the page. So clarity is the most important thing.
Yes.
Everything else can and should be there, but clarity is number one.
Absolutely.
The other thing though, pointing back from this, is outside of those panel descriptions of specific things, like I think it's usually important to have a more general conversation with your artist about tone, about like this is how this is what the kind of core of this book is. I think that's always a conversation that should happen before you get to actually working on it. Whether it's,
frankly, I think it should happen before you satire, you should figure that out before you hire someone. Like it should be when you're talking to someone about working on your book. Like, you don't want to hire someone who, like we were recently looking at some people for something you were working on. It's like, all right, let's make sure that they have examples of work that match the vibe that you're going for. Because you don't want to hire someone who's like a really good artist, but maybe they're like really great at drawing, I don't know, kind of cartoony styles, but you're trying to do a horror book, or you're trying to do like a slice of life book, and you hire a superhero artist. It's like, that's, you gotta have that figured out even before you lock in with someone. And it's all about 100%. That communicado.
Yeah, fully agree. But let me turn this back a little bit and throw it to you. It's like, what do you think in terms of like the words on the page, dialogue, captions? Like, what can the writer do to impact the tone in your humble opinion?
I think a really, really important thing is to make sure that you have a protagonist who fits in with your tone. So if you have a kind of like, I don't know, noir type story, you don't want to focus on the happy-go-lucky detective. He can be like the side character. You want to focus on the Ari Nasser of the group, who's like, you don't want to write the Bullock, you want to write the Gordon.
To Pulp Detective.
Well, I mean, I feel like that's one of the like toniest type of things that you can do.
Oh, it absolutely is. I just love that that's where you landed based on where this podcast has been.
Look, leave me and my old man tastes alone. I understand that I am a man in my 80s. It's fine. But yeah, I think having a protagonist who matches your tone is going to be the best way to do it, because your protagonist, more often than not, is probably going to be the one with the most words on the page, or at least the most time on the page. So having someone who is going to like kind of glower at the people around them is going to help you sell that kind of grimier tone, as opposed to someone who's like smiling and everyone's glaring at them. That's a completely different vibe. And so then I think you can also match their dialogue really well with it, because you've picked their personality on purpose. So when they talk, they really kind of sell that. And when they interact with other people, it's kind of reinforced, whether it's somebody who matches their vibe and, it's like, oh yeah, this is a world full of kind of grumpy detective types. or if it's that they're like off put by this person, it's like, oh yeah, this person's kind of in their own little world. Having the tone tied into the way that you make your main character, and then also keeping that in mind with how the side characters and supporting cast react to and interact with that type of vibe is, I think, the number one way to make sure that you've got the tone that you're looking for.
Yeah. No, I think that's great advice. Your main character, everything in comic books, because when you're talking about a medium where like space is limited, like you're dealing with 24, 22, 20 page, whatever the hell it is, your main character is going to be so involved in almost everything. Like there is a decent amount of comic books where there is not a page that the main character is not on, or
Yeah.
if there is, there's like 2 pages that the main character isn't on. Like it is going to revolve so heavily around your main character that having them fit the tone is really going to be important. Though I will say that there absolutely have been and can be books where like the whole point is putting the protagonist in like a world or something with a
Oh, for
tone
sure.
that doesn't quite, match them. Exceptions to everything we talk about.
Exactly.
But just
And
know that you're intending to do an exception and not like
and
just.
that's what I was about to say. It comes down to, I feel like every creator corner, we just boil it down to, if you're doing it with intention, if it's being done with a purpose, you're doing it right, probably.
Yeah, it's better to like understand where you're coming into it than it is to
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah.
Well, do you have any more advice on setting tone?
Yeah, I'll land on like as a writer, I think if you're trying to kind of get the tone of your dialogue, there's kind of a couple things that I think are important, and not just dialogue, captions too, but that's kind of in the there's a couple ways that yeah, I think you can kind of track your tone or try to figure out your tone. One, read things out loud, like that really helps to kind of bounce it back. But the other thing is, and this I feel like we constantly go back to this in creative corners, but it's have somebody else read your work, because maybe you are reading it out loud or you're reading in your head, but you're reading it with that like voice or with that actor or with that whatever, and somebody else reads it and they're like, oh man, dude, that line on page 15 was so funny, and you're like, funny? Like, damn, that's not ooh. Or they'll be like, that was badass, and you're like, oh, that was supposed to be like terrifying or like whatever, like. So having somebody else read it and kind of go over it is going to give you how it's playing to other people, especially if you have multiple people reading it, and you can get kind of how it's playing off to others. But yeah, those are kind of the couple ways that I think you can really like take a look at the way that you're impacting tone on a page.
I've been struck by another one as a quick final tip. I think so much of it is because I was thinking back to the books that we've like really applauded their tone for. I feel like so much of it is also giving room on your page for your setting to impact the tone. Like with Morningstar in the Forest, with the One Hand, with the city, even with Lotus Land, where we maybe didn't love the way that the book ended up, but the tone of it or the vibes of it were always really strong. And it's like letting the setting kind of be a character, or even Petrolhead, letting the world itself exist on the page. It's worthwhile page space, even if it's not like moving your plot forward necessarily.
Yeah, no, setting's a big one. Understand establishing shots and why they exist, and kind of let your and that's your book should have a setting, which is a weird tip to make, but a setting isn't just a place. Like your book should have a setting. Like, what is the world? Like, decide what your world is, and just saying the real world is not your world. Like, there are a million books set in the real world, and they're all set in completely different worlds. And maybe that doesn't make a ton of sense, but the idea is that they all have their own tones and their own vibes, and the way that their world is going to interact with the characters and with the story. So yeah, setting, world, establishing shots, the landscapes of your book, which is obviously going to be so intertwined with your artist. So make sure that you are indicating this to your artist, that you're talking to your artist about it, that you're letting your artist do things with setting, with scenery,
and that you're asking them to do things with that. Because if an artist is given a page that says like, oh, interior apartment, that's nothing. But if it's like interior apartment, here's like the vibe of the apartment, and out the window we can see that it's raining. Even that adds to the to really tie into the one hand. It's always fucking raining there. Like,
Oh yeah.
giving yourself things that giving specific direction about your environment, and especially in those wider shots where you're really leading down into where you are is super 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 important. But have we reached our end here? You
I
prattled.
think we have.
Wonderful. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for prattling with me. Truly nothing brings me joy quite like trying to put mechanics to the creative.
That's right. But we, of course, as always, have so much more content on this channel, on this podcast. We do a ton of stuff. We have a ton of episodes at this point. This past Saturday, we have just done our second part of the iconic comic book deaths ranking video, so you can check that out. It should be up whenever you're watching this.
Jean Grey death. We did Jean Grey in the first part. Now we're doing another Jean Grey in this part. We've got some turtles again, because we did a bunch of turtles in the first part.
We have some Walking Dead, some more Walking Dead here. We have only one new DC death, but so many more Marvel deaths. Part one was, or sorry, two new DC deaths.
Yes.
But yeah, we finally have all of the Marvel deaths that we kind of didn't have in the first one are there now. We have some Power Ranger deaths as well,
which is thrilling.
Thrilling. So yeah, we got a lot.
That is already out waiting for you from last Saturday, and this coming Saturday we're continuing our journey across the Massiveverse, and we're finally jumping into Rogue Sun. We saw a little preview of Rogue Sun when we read Supermassive in our Inferno Girl Red episode, but now we're going into the full first volume of that.
Which I think we were both very excited for, because he had such a strong personality and maybe the best design in the Massiveverse so far. Like, so good. And I believe this is the other ongoing, right? Like, alongside Reading the Black. I believe this is the other ongoing. So that's super exciting to have another character who we know is going to kind of stick around and keep doing things. So, yeah, that's awesome. But we also have polls for next week's episode, because, of course, we always have our Wednesday episode. So we have Absolute Power #1, the event officially starting after our precursor this week. In other DC books, we have The Boy Wonder #3, which I believe is going to be the Tim Drake issue.
It sure is. So tune in if you want to hear us just slander Tim for 10 minutes straight.
Yes. As if we don't get enough opportunity to do that on this podcast already. Then finally, after our Local Man bonus episode, which you should totally check out because it's an hour of Local Man goodness as we caught up on Local Man, we will be talking about Local Man #11, our first, as it comes out, Local Man issue.
Doing it live.
Super exciting. Doing it live. Except not really live, just as it, it'll come out a week later. And lastly, we have friend of the pod, Nicholas Mueller's book, Winnie the Pooh, Demon Hunter #1, which is coming out this Wednesday. I believe his first title in stores. I hope he'll correct me if I got that wrong. But I believe it's his first in-store title, so that's super. Well, he had a story he had a story literally a couple weeks ago in Antarctic Press's Exciting Comics Anthology, but his first full solo book, issue. So that's awesome. And you can check out the interview with him all the way back in episode 5 of the podcast or something. Oh my gosh.
That. Yeah, it was so early on. I don't know why he came and hung out with us. Yeah, it was episode 5.
Yeah, it'll be linked. Yeah, nailed it. So it'll be linked. Everything will be linked. Tune in this Saturday for Rogue Sun. Watch this past Saturday's iconic comic deaths. Or join us next week. We'll hopefully see you there. Comic Geeks.
Oh shit, I didn't do credits for Absolute Power.
God
I forgot it existed.
Damn it, Katie!
It's fine.